When you build a company from $0 and two people literally in a kitchen using a Keurig and some plastic syringes that we found on Amazon to fill bottles with, to upwards of 80 employees in two states, across three buildings, through a pandemic, through all the hurdles, to eventually the partnership with Disney and launching on Target shelves before we left.
Wow.
It w- was a ride.
Hey, 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 welcome back to Raw Talks. My name is Rai Hannah, and I'll be your host. I am so excited to invite you to this episode with Liora Dudar. Before we do that, let me explain to you what Raw Talks is all about. Raw Talks is a platform that promotes powerful stories from inspirational women, highlighting their raw, real struggles about the challenges and successes that they face in their journey. As I mentioned today, we've got Liora Dudar to join us, who is a inspirational award-winning photographer who also co-founded Overtone Hair Care, scaling the brand to 55 million while advocating for radical inclusion. After exiting the company in 2022, she now coaches founders, stealing lessons from her own journey through business, life altering health struggles, and deep personal loss. I'm so excited to share Leora's story with you today. It is raw, it is deep, and it is vulnerable. And I'm so excited to dive in and looking forward to what you guys learn and gain from this conversation.
I'm just so flattered by your introduction, frankly. So I'm just sitting here blushing. I'm like, oh, this is so nice. And after our conversation a couple of weeks ago, when you invited me on the pod, I was just really grateful to be considered. And I'm so happy to be here. And you've been incredibly thoughtful this whole process. So yeah, let's dig in.
Thank you so much. You know, guys, it's so funny. Leora and I met through a mutual community that we're part of. And, it started with a curious question that she had on her intro. And you guys know me, I'm always curious. And so I reached out, and then one thing led to the next. And I was so moved by her story. I'm like, you got to come on Raw Talks. And so here we are today. And what I love about that is that you just never know what that one connection is going to do. So never feel like you shouldn't reach out, because reaching out could change your life. And frankly, it has changed mine and my view about motherhood completely every time I talk to someone else who's been a mother. So enough about that. I think I've intrigued you enough. Let's get into it with her entrepreneurial journey and experiencing failure. So Liora, I want to start it off with Overtone. Let's take it back a little bit to Overtone. So as a founder of a $55 million company, what is the most profound lesson that you're distilling and sharing with other founders as they navigate the complex entrepreneurial minefield?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I started my coaching practice essentially around this question because
Mm,
I felt at so many times so alone on this journey, even though I had a business partner and even though I had wonderful support in my staff, there was just so much that I was learning. To back it up even further, just to give people, in case they've never heard of Overtone, just like
yeah.
a quick overview. Overtone makes hair color. So we made coloring conditioners. So conditioner that colors your hair. We made it in a very lengthy SKU count. So we had almost every color under the sun, starting
Wow.
with and prioritizing what we called fantasy shades: red, orange,
Hmm.
yellow, pink, blue, purple, teal, and introducing it to people in a sort of show over tell kind of way. We started the
Mm,
company in 2014, right as Instagram and sort of influencer marketing, especially in the beauty industry, were starting to pick up, but it was very much the Wild West and a very direct to consumer friendly environment.
mm,
So we were very much our own consumers and leaned into our experience observing influencers and working with them, and really built the brand through word of mouth and community building. When you build a company from $0 and two people literally in a kitchen using a Keurig and some plastic syringes that we found on Amazon to fill bottles with, to upwards of 80 employees in two states, across three buildings, through a pandemic, through all the hurdles, to eventually the partnership with Disney and launching on Target shelves before we left.
wow.
It w- was a ride. And I think one of the hardest transitions in that is that I find that a lot of founders who start in bootstrapping are really excellent, fearless doers. They're not afraid to get out there and get their hands dirty and learn in public and make mistakes and fix things as they go. But it's that transition from doer to leader that gets really, really, really challenging. And things that you used to be able to intuit with your team when you were smaller, anywhere from like 3 to 10 employees, once you sort of start growing and expanding even more and working with more vendors, that natural communication and sort of implicit understanding of what we're all doing here fades. And you have to learn how to become a really good communicator, very sure of what you're about and very open to coaching about how you're going to get there. And it's a really weird line to walk. So I think when I think back to those questions and I think about the many ways that Overtone succeeded with us and the many ways that it failed, or that I feel that I failed my team,
Hmm.
it for me came back to this proposition of we had very strong values, but we didn't have a mission or vision. And when we transitioned from doers to leaders, it was really important to communicate where we were going to the team. Could always
Mm,
communicate how we were going to go where we were going, but
mm,
needed, in retrospect, a better answer than more and bigger. And I think our team and our values really spoke to that we were doing not just more and not just bigger, but I couldn't articulate it. And it
mm.
proved challenging to make strong strategic decisions. And I didn't know who I was as a leader. And I didn't know how to get the support. I just didn't know what I didn't know. And so now when I work with founders and I think about the most important lessons that have really come from that, it's all about helping founders be really vulnerable with themselves about why they want a company beyond a paycheck and how to become and learn the skills necessary to do leadership and manage that messy middle.
That was a lot. And there's so much humility in there. Like you just slowly slipped in partnership with Disney, getting on the shelves at Target. Like, girl, come on. Like that's huge.
So I padded my background a little bit.
Yeah.
In the beauty industry, getting an Allure Best in Beauty award is like winning an Oscar, and our team was so talented at what they did and so
Yeah.
excellent about getting our product into the hands of people who are decision makers about things like that. And I remember the day in 2019 when I found out that we won that Best in Beauty, and then we won another one the next year. And it was just like, those accomplishments meant the world to me. And I'll tell you the funny thing about the partnership with Disney, we did some advertising and partnership with them on the launch of Cruella, which was obviously a very hair forward movie.
Oh, interesting.
But the thing that meant the most to me about that was we had a videographer that had been with us since probably year 4 of the company, and incredibly talented woman, eager to learn, eager to grow, ready to just sort of like take things and build things with them. And she at one point had a second job being a Disney princess at birthday parties and had a real desire to work with Disney, the company, especially and see sort of like how they put everything together, and getting to tell her that she was going to be the direct lead on a videography project with working with Disney was like, honestly, it was like one of the best days for me of the whole company was seeing her
Literally
face.
dream come true for her. I could just imagine her excitement.
Oh my gosh. And she did a fantastic job. I still sometimes go back and watch it just because the team absolutely smashed it. They really
Do
did
you
a
have
great job.
do you have that publicly available on YouTube or something that you can share the link with us?
Yeah, it can probably I'll go and find it and I'll send it to you
Yeah,
after.
I'd
Yeah,
love to
yeah.
put that on the show notes and have people check that out. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And I want to go back even further in what you said about bootstrapping. Entrepreneurs who bootstrap are fearless doers. And that really struck me. And I made a note about that. Even afterwards, how you said you have to move from being a fearless doer to a leader. That's hard. Like as an entrepreneur myself, like I'll be honest, guys, like I am learning how to not be so in the weeds. Like I feel my whole life as an individual contributor, I'm never formally taken a manager role. Like I think I've been exposed to potentially taking that on, but I've never been able to prove that yes, I can lead. I can manage someone under me, even though I've always wanted that. But I've never had the opportunity. So now it's like I'm running my own company. How do I eventually move to the point where we're going to grow our team where I'm not so much in the weeds still? And I feel one thing we struggle with is it's so hard to let go of what's happening in the weeds. And I see your reactions. You're like, yeah, I know what that's like. And it's like, it's your baby. Like you want to control everything. And sometimes it's not about the control. It's about my team member. We're a small team, but my team member had this conversation with me. You know what, Rihanna, you need a VA and you're so good at what you do, but you can do so much more. Like you're this visionary and you're not able to tap into that visionary piece because you're so stuck in the weeds right now. And when he said that, I'm like, you're right. And then I started going into coach mode. Okay, why am I so stuck up in the weeds? Why can't I let this go? And then I realized I'm not fearless. I have fear of stepping into this role as a visionary. So
Yeah.
it's comfortable for me to be in the weeds because I know how to do that and I can do
Yep.
it well. And I can do a little bit of visionary, but if you put me too much into that, I feel uncomfortable. So I'd like to ask you, for those who might not even have gotten that insight. Like I got this insight this week and I'm like, oh yeah, coach
Yeah,
mode.
yeah,
That really
yeah.
helped me a lot today.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it's wild. Like
So
doing
like tell me about that.
yeah.
How do you navigate? Like I'm afraid to be that visionary to be transform into a leader. So what does leader mean and how do you become that and move away from this fear if you are not fearless?
So I think a lot of people think that things like management and leadership are inherent. You either have
Yes.
it or
And
you
they're like
don't.
the same. Like if
And
you
then
have
they're the
this
same.
title, you're a manager, you're a leader. Like I would love to
Like
know what's your take on that.
you're suddenly a leader. And like I have led easily through my life without acknowledging that that's a thing that I do.
Mm,
So being told that I'm a leader versus acting like a leader sort of present like an interesting conundrum. And I find that in my own experience, there was resistance on like a couple of levels to being a leader. And I see it take a few flavors among my entrepreneurs. On people get told that that they're a visionary, like you were just told, and they're sort of like, I don't even know what that means. They're like, and there's things like, please go take a vacation on a beach in Aruba, have some thoughts, and then come back and tell us what your thoughts are. And it just
mm,
feels so like, ew, like, is that my job? Am I exploiting my team? Or it's like, oh my God, that sounds great. And then you go to Aruba and you don't have any ideas. And then you come back and you're like, I don't even know what to say. Or you're like me. And when you have grown that team and you're used to feeling really connected with them, you're like, oh my God, what if I step away and they think I'm a snob or unapproachable? And it gets like all this stuff sort of put on it. And one of the things that I've learned is that, there is a lot of chatter in high value businesses. So like when we hit 30, 40 million in top line revenue, this is sort of what I was starting to experience, where people started telling you like, oh, well, you deserve this, or you should take this off, or you should like do this thing. And there's like a lot of stories we tell about what leaders deserve, get, but not really like what they do or how they do it well. And then there's like, well, I want to be, I sort of sat in a seat where I was like, it's very clear to me where my money gets made. Like my team makes money for the company. They are the people that are doing a lot of the work or all of the work. They are the people who are having the impact, are coming up with these sort of micro ideas to like improve things, are really like building something important. And then like, what I fly down and chat with my warehouse manager and work on the line with them for a little bit and make them feel seen. And like, what? That's my job. Like that feels not worth what I'm doing.
mhm,
And so when I see people sort of try to bridge this gap, there's certain elements that matter, right? There's
mm,
scaling. I can't grow this if all I have is my own capacity, period. Then we think about diverse opinion, right? I can't
mhm,
grow this if my voice is the loudest and most important voice. I'm not
mm,
introducing any of that into my sphere. Cool. And then we think about, I will never be as good at one thing as I am at everything. Right. So, like, as the top of a company, it's really good to be a jack of all trades. It's really good to understand a little bit about a lot and to have like wide interest. Right. But I am never going to be as good a digital marketer as the person who has spent their entire career in digital marketing.
mm,
So, when I think about what the role of leader is and why mission and vision and values matter so much, it's because a leader's job is to sit there and go, why should this exist? If the leader sits there and their job is to go, why should this even exist? Beyond like my initial thought and inspiration and pushing. Then I have to ask myself the question, well, what does it do? And when it's the worst day in the company, why do my feet hit the floor? And why do I get out of bed every day? Like on the worst day of my business, what drags me out of bed and into the chair?
Mhm.
Cool. That's our mission, right?
Mhm.
We do this and we do it because this. Then you have to ask yourself, well, what happens when I do my mission 10 times? What happens when
Mm.
I do it 500 times? What
Mhm.
happens when 1,000 people are touched by this mission? And let's say I execute it perfectly and my team executes perfectly. What happens when I reach so many people? And that's how you write a vision statement. You say, when I've completed my mission 5,000 times, this will be the broader impact that that work creates. And then the values sit there and go, well, how do I even want to make that happen? Okay, well, what's really important to me? So one of the things that I'll give as an example was one of our values at Overtone was intersectional feminism. And that can also be called radical inclusion, right? And it was there from day one. In my career as a photographer, it was very closely tied to the activism that I was participating in, which was very much based around radical inclusion and the voices of women in their own decisions.
What does that mean, radical inclusion, before you continue?
Radical inclusion is sort of the principle that you're aware of how your bias will create a natural exclusion. And so you're doing extra work to make sure that you're bringing in as many viewpoints, as many types of people as possible.
Mm.
So, like, Sonia Renee Taylor was the person I think who coined radical inclusion as a term.
Mhm.
Intersectional feminism is the one that we used. People tend to understand radical inclusion more as sort of like the output of that. And the way that I would define radical inclusion or radical intersectional feminism in the company was basically by saying each of us, exists at an intersection of multiple identities. And each of those identities allows us access and removes us access from certain spaces.
Hmm.
And it's our job to acknowledge how we have agency or don't, or have access or don't, and use our power and our privilege and our position in order to create broader equity. Right. So as a company, how do we do that? As a hair care company, as a hair color company, why do we even do that? And for me, the basis of that value was when we started Overtone, I was very heavily involved in the body positive activist scene. I already had 2 viral photo projects out in the world. And I didn't want to start a beauty company that contributed to the problems that I was activating against, right?
Mm.
Or that I was advocating for. And
Mhm.
so anything that I created and output, I wanted to be a part of that broader message. So radical inclusion and intersectional feminism at the very outset was I'm never going to Photoshop a body or a result that comes
Mm.
from this product. I'll do color correction. If you got like a blemish that's going to go away in 3 days, but the photo shoot happens to be today, yeah, I'll take that out. But I'm not going to skin smooth you. I'm not going to make your face symmetrical. I'm not going to pretend anything.
Wow.
Our social media is going to demonstrate that this works on a variety of hair types. You don't know if it's for you if you're not there, right? At one point, I was informed by a friend who works with students who are visually impaired. And he let me know that actually a lot of his students used our product because for the folks that did have limited sight, they used colorful hair as a way to identify themselves when they could see themselves. And so I was like, oh, well, now we definitely need to include image captions on our Instagram pictures so that we can be inclusive to that
Wow.
community. So we just tried to bring people in from day one. And ultimately, values are the how. So it's, I know why I do what I do. I know what happens when I do it. And here's how I'm going to do it. And as
Mm.
a leader, when you can be certain about these things, and I think every business starts with a hypothesis. And then once that hypothesis gets tested, then it's time to write the mission, vision, and values truly, because you know a
Mm.
little bit more. Year 2 or 3 is typically what I see as like a really good time to write these down.
Mhm.
But it also helps you be able to call your people to you, whether that's
Mm.
employees, clients, or partners. And then you
Mm.
can say, here's what we're about. Here's why we're about it. Here's what's going to happen when we're about it. And here's how we do it. And that how allows everybody to coalesce, bring themselves to the table and understand what's most important at that table. The job of a leader is not to tell everybody underneath them how to do what they're experts at, but to tell them what the priorities are and where we're going. So a lot of people, when I work with them, will be like, oh, I want my team involved in writing the mission, vision, and values. And I'm like, I hear that you want to be a really generous leader where you want input from the people who are working on your thing. The goal of the leader is not to put the burden of long term strategy on your team. The goal is to tell them where you're going and ask them how to help everybody get there. They get to decide if they're opting in and out of your mission, vision, and values. That's their choice. You don't ever get to decide if you're opting in or out of these values. So they need to be something that the buck stops with you. You need to be highly and totally accountable to these. And that's your job. You write the mission, vision, values. You tell people where you're going and you help and you activate their motivation and inspiration, get them to tell you what they can contribute to that goal. And you play conductor and you organize. That's tough to do when what you're
Yeah.
used to doing is being like, oh, does that package need to go out? Let me just, go
Yeah.
and get it.
Yeah.
It's a totally different part of your brain. But once you sort of get command of it,
Yeah.
it can be really fun.
I love that you painted that. And by the way, you need to get your own podcast and talk about all this fun stuff because I'm like, this is a framework. Like, this needs to be published by Liora Dudar. Come pay for this on my website.
I do
This is
workshops.
Yes, this is that's fantastic. Like, I think those questions that you posed are very helpful, and I hope people are going to write these down and really take some time to think through about this because sometimes it is hard to come up with your mission and vision. But I like what you said at the end. It's not the team's job to get into the weeds of the strategy. Like, you have to keep those swim lanes clearly distinguished because that's what they're looking to you for. And sometimes we forget about it. Like, we mix it up because we're like, oh, we want to be helpful. We want them to feel like they know what we're doing. There's no like blindfolds on anybody. Like, they can't see what's happening behind the scenes. But there's a difference. And I understood that from the way you described it. You have to be the one who tells them where they're going. And they
Yes,
won't know that until you plan out that strategy, your mission, your vision, the how on your own first. And it has to be super clear to you because it's not clear to you. How are you going to communicate it to them?
exactly. Exactly. And like, I think as entrepreneurs, the other fallacy that I see, and one that I definitely experienced, is that I assumed that everybody's brain worked like mine. So the thing that I see often with early entrepreneurs who have a couple of hires under them, maybe like they're in year 6 months, like half year to a year, maybe two, and they assume that everyone they hire thinks like them, is entrepreneurial, wants that kind of thing, would never want to be told what to do. And I think a lot of early hires, for the most part, are sort of jack of all trades, entrepreneurial. I say entrepreneurial, like they like to build within the structure, or maybe they're entrepreneurial or they're not afraid of risk, or they're able to take a risk, right? By working for a company that's maybe not totally established. But I think what I failed to understand and what I learned over time and what I now teach other entrepreneurs and other founders is that people like structure and they like to know where they're going. Entrepreneurs are sick. We don't always like to know where we're going and we like to sort of leave it out there and floating. But your job is to sort of like take what you think the world should be like and how you're going to use your business to do that and help people say like, okay, this year our top three priorities are bloop, bloop, and bloop. Our strategy the next 2 years looks like this. Now let's think about execution. Like, Jordy, you're in marketing. You tell me, what do you need in terms of resources in order to get us to this goal?
Yeah.
Back a plan in for me. How are we going to do that? And that allows them to be entrepreneurial within their set of genius, right? And to like determine their resources. And that's also how, as a leader, you create expansion of space for yourself where not everything is funneling up to you. It can feel productive to always have everything come through you, but your job is not to be productive. Your job is to create a strong team. And a strong team isn't one where everybody's on a hamster wheel all the time. That leaves no room for error, mistakes, anomalies, or anything like that. You need enough space to care for fires and you need enough space to have inspiration, and people need to breathe. So if you're always running on a hamster wheel trying to do everything for everyone, let them breathe. Let
Yeah.
yourself breathe, right? Come into it the best you can.
You said something that made me, I'm starting to shift my perspective about strengths finders now. I've always been against it. That's a whole other conversation. You guys can listen to Lisa Vang's Nest conversation. We talked all about it. So when that one gets released, when it's available, you can listen to that. But when you said that, like, you don't have to know everything. You have to know a little bit of everything, but not a lot about one thing. And then you need to let people know what you need help with. Like, I need a plan for getting this done based on the marketing. So, Jordan, how are you going to help me do it? That just reminded me of the connector skill
Mm.
as a strength.
Mhm.
And that's one of my strengths. And I'm like, it's trash of an assessment. Belief and
You sound
connector.
like me.
I'm like, this is not tangible. What am I going to do with this? I'm an individual contributor. Can't do anything with it.
Yeah.
Connector and belief. But when you said that, it made me realize, right, Hannah, you were always manager material because those are the skills that are required for a manager and a leader, rather a leader to succeed. So you were always leader material. Let me change my words here. And I never saw it that way. But
Mm.
just now I saw it that way. I'm like, "Huh,
Yeah.
I can see how that makes sense. You need to have strong belief in order to take something from an idea to something that's going to be $55 million. You need
Absolutely.
to have belief in order to make people feel like they're working on a mission that matters. If
Exactly.
you don't have that, then how are you going to inspire others to stay in your company and get things done and work?
One of the things that I really liked about Overtone was that the product was inconsequential. Nobody need like, I think some people get into the lines of work that they do because they like that their work has real impact and matters, like
Yeah.
a surgeon, right? Like
Yeah.
your work is
Yeah.
consequential. And what I
Sure.
loved about Overtone is that it was like inconsequential. I'm like, nobody needs this, but
Yeah.
a lot of people like it and it can have positive impact on people's lives. Great. I'm a nice to have and I like being in that area as far as
Interesting.
like owning a business is concerned. Before that, I one of my last jobs where I worked for somebody else, I worked at a custom jewelry firm and we did a lot of engagement rings and I was shipping engagement rings like overseas to like places where I had to figure out how to write addresses in for another country that didn't have traditional street addresses. And that I was like, this is too consequential for me. I need something a little more lightweight.
Yeah.
But what our values and were able to give us and what I wish we had written a mission and vision for, but what our values were able to give us was real driving purpose so that when we got up in the morning, it wasn't just like, oh, like my job is to make hair color cool. But like there was this one moment where an influencer made a video and she and I are still in touch to this day. She's absolutely lovely. She made this video where she was talking about her child transitioning and like working through gender identity and gender politics and gender expression. And she made this incredible, beautiful, meaningful video about coloring her child's hair while talking about accepting them who they were at every step of this journey as they learned and discovered about themselves and just like sort of holding them with open arms about it. And it was like such a total encapsulation of this idea of self identity and representation and
Mm.
bonding and community through our product. And I was like, we hadn't, she had just had our product. She just ordered our product. We hadn't worked with her, but she tagged us in the post and like we sent it to the entire company immediately. And everybody cried. It was like just such a
Oh,
beautiful moment. And I reached out to her. I'm like, you are the sweetest. I'm gonna send you the biggest freaking care package of your life. Like you tell me what you guys need. I'll get it out to
wow.
you. And it was just lovely to be a part of that moment. So it's the stuff like
That's
that that
amazing.
really drives.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And you know what? Before we go to our next topic, I'm really wanting to go to that next topic, but you said something else. And you said, I'm okay being a by the way product. Yeah, I can't remember exactly what you said. It was like,
Sure.
I'm okay being like a by the way product. I know
And
customers
nice to
don't
have.
need this. A nice to have. There you go. That's what it was. Like, I'm okay being a nice to have. I don't think most people are okay with that because when you say I'm okay being a nice to have business, like product or service, you pick whatever you're doing. If you're a nice to have, that means you're not top of mind. People
Mm,
don't need you. And
hmm
so that can be a scary thought for an entrepreneur because if people don't need you, that means you're not going to be making money
mm.
anytime soon. My question for you is, how do you offer somebody that perspective to think positively about being a nice to have versus a real need and being
Mm.
okay with that nice to have, given that it's aligned with your mission, your vision, and your values as a company?
There are so many quotes about this. The one thing that's really coming to mind for me right now is recently I read a book about Georgia O'Keeffe and feminism and Georgia O'Keeffe's relationship to feminism, which was fraught and interesting. But one of the themes of Georgia O'Keeffe's work and of women artists of that time was, or women American artists of that time, was that the idea that you should have beauty around you is just as important as having necessary items around you. That like life is not only about survival, but it is about, and sometimes it is. Sometimes all life is survival, but that's not all that life can have to offer you. And if all life is survival, I hope it's only for a short period of time. And that after that, you can experience the beauty around you and that you have an opportunity to experience the beauty around you. I mean, I'm a photographer and a fine artist, and it feels like all of the things I do are sort of qualitative and inconsequential. My husband's an aerospace engineer. He does quantitative, consequential things all the time.
Nice.
Like, what I'm like, what do I do? Like, what do I make? And
Yeah.
it's funny to hear it from his eyes. And it's
Yeah.
funny to like I just looked over here because I keep a board of letters and emails and gifts from people over here that like it's my nice board. It's like I get to look at this board. And when I think about it, there are letters from clients, employees, family, friends, former employers, photos. And I think a business is not only about the product that you produce and the clients you serve, it's about the entire community and culture that you build within that. I think The Office says it in their final season, but it's like you spend so much of your life with the people that you work with. It should be a quality experience. And the impacts that you have on the people around you matter. And so it's like, yeah, my product was not like nobody needs purple hair. But for the people who find purple hair and it makes them feel like an amazing thing in them has opened up or it's freeing in some way, that's great. But what about everything else that touched that? How was everybody treated? How did the product go out the door? How was the supply chain? All of these things sort of come together and also matter. So it's like the difference between thinking that all things in life must be relevant and all things that matter have to be quantitative, and opening that up to be like, if my life wasn't in some way beautiful, would that be worse for me? And if all I had was transactional interaction, what would that mean for my quality of life? So I try and think of it that way.
I love that. And I think that leads us into our next topic. But I just wanted to leave a quick comment that when you said life is not just survival, I also wanted to add, even though we spend the majority of our time at work, sometimes you can get so wrapped up into that thought that you feel my life is work. But we forget that we work to live. We work to earn money for food,
Mm,
to have a home, to pay for
mhm.
your mortgage, to feed your kids, to take your kids to daycare. We don't think about that because it's so maybe stable for us now. But for people who it's not stable, they're literally living paycheck to paycheck. They're in survival mode because they don't have a choice. It is that. Like,
Yeah.
I need this, right? But when it's not a need anymore, you start thinking, oh, well, I spend most of my time here. I'm going to make this my life. But I like what you said that it's not just about survival. You need to experience the beauty around you. And I think we need to expand our thoughts about that. Like, yes, have absolutely have quality experiences at work and have a good influential place at your work. Like if it's toxic, leave. Like you can find something better. But there is more than just survival. And I think as a working mom and a parent, I am in survival mode all the time. Like I just went for an appointment today and I was told I might potentially need another surgery. And I'm like, already gotten two done. And I broke down, and the doctor was like, you caught me off guard today. Like, what's going on?
It's like not my doctor being like, you need a wellness check.
Yeah, it's like you totally caught me off guard. And I'm like, but I can't I'm like, I can't do this. Like I've already done two in my lifetime in a very short amount of time. I can't do another. Like, there's no way. And I think it was like a reality check for me. Like, I have a choice. And I think with just, survival mode or not survival mode, you also have a choice. Like, you don't have to stay in a situation because you feel you need to, but we need to separate it out. Like, what is a need? What is a nice to have? And what should be there just because it's beautiful? And if we can find a balance in all of that, I think we'd be living a lot happier lives. But I wanted to get your take on that really quick before we move on.
Yeah, I mean, I have so much to say on the topic of like making work your identity and burnout because ultimately like that is what how I survived, and we'll get
Yeah.
to that in a minute. But it sort of reminds me of like when people who have never been food insecure judge people for buying like cookies on
Yeah.
like their food stamps. And I'm like, everyone can have something nice. Everyone can have a treat. It's not, you don't deserve nice things when you hit a certain economic level. You deserve nice things and you deserve humanity because you're alive. And that compassion that we can feel for everyone, hopefully we can also feel for ourselves.
That everyone deserves nice things. You know, when you said that, I probably would have thought that. I'll be honest. That
A
like,
lot of a
yeah,
lot of us do, like we were
you
trained to, right? Yeah.
yeah, because like there was a situation where we knew a business owner in Indiana, and he said, um, when people would get their tax refunds, I was trying to remember what exactly did he say? When they would get their tax refunds, the first thing they would do is they would come to his shop and they get a new phone case. And they didn't need a new phone case. And he would tell them no. Because he knew them. They would come often and he knew them. He's like, go feed your daughter. Don't use your money here. Like, go feed your daughter. Don't get your nails done. I think to some extent he was right. And I'm like, yeah, of course. Go for, like, good for you that you
Yeah.
helped them to make those decisions. But when you just said that everybody deserves nice things and it doesn't matter about your economic situation, you're right. You're right.
It's why lipstick sales didn't dip during the Great Depression.
Mm,
I'm thinking of a different reference now, and it's a
yeah.
very nerdy one. It's from Serenity, but it's like it's very easy to forget who you are if you never allow yourself to engage with yourself. If you're only invested in your basic necessities, it's very difficult to be a person.
Yeah. And you know what? I have this is one of my nice things. I'll show you guys. It's like I don't
I
know what
love a
it
mug.
is.
I love a mug. This is one of mine, actually.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. That
I'm
looks
a mug.
handmade. Is that one handmade?
It is. I have a thing about like mugs and small bowls and like ceramics, and so my husband has said I'm only allowed to buy them when we travel. So this one is from Scotland.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna keep that in mind now. That is so cool. You buy it like
So
as
all of
a
our like
little
kitchen utensils
token.
and stuff, yeah, are from
Nice.
places we travel.
I'll be honest with you. This one, okay, it looks like it was made in a factory, but I have another one that was like literally handmade by pottery. I got this from Goodwill. And
It's
I
so
thought it was so
cute.
cute
It's
because
so
of the
cheerful.
artwork, the gold.
I
And, you
love
know,
it.
I hesitated because when I was there, I was thinking, like, this speaks to me. Like, I just, like, it was so, like, it's round, it's small. Like, I don't know what it was. Something spoke to me. And the first thing that came in my head, right? Right? You don't need this. You don't need to
Mhm,
spend this money here.
mhm.
You came here with a purpose to buy something for your daughter. You don't need this. And I put it down. But my husband's like,
Go
I
get
saw
it.
you look at that cup. Go ahead and pick it up. And I like, no, 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 no. I really don't need it. We have so many cups in the house. Like, I don't need another cup. But when you said everyone deserves nice things, like I I feel good when I look at this. And when I'm like talking and you're talking in between, I'm like like it
Yeah.
just nice things have a different impact on you mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I don't have words for it right now, and I don't want to soak up our conversation in that. But I think there's so much meaning to what you said that everybody deserves nice things. And sometimes, it's depending on your upbringing, like my upbringing was always if you need it, you buy it. You don't need it, you don't buy it. And that was survival mode for us, and that was required at that time. But sometimes you need to unlearn things as you grow, which is hard, but it can help change your life altogether. And speaking of life, I know it wasn't like smooth road for you to this 55 million. And I really want to get into this topic of health and trauma and
Yeah,
burnout before
yeah,
we run out of time. So let's
yeah,
take it there if that's okay with you.
please.
All right. So after experiencing a serious health impact, what was a necessary self-care and recovery work you had to undertake to truly heal and find sustainability outside of the hustle culture? And I would love for you to walk us through, if you're comfortable, what was the
Mhm.
health impact you faced and take
Yeah,
us through that journey to how you recovered and found sustainability outside hustle culture.
for sure. So I'll talk a little bit also about things that I knew
Yeah.
we might discuss later, but basically we started the business in 2014. And then up until 2020, I'll say we had like hockey stick growth. It was like we were doubling month over month. During the pandemic, we probably tripled in a week, like our total volume. It was, or maybe 5x overnight our top line, because what do you do when you suddenly don't have a dress code? Oh my God, everybody's, either cutting bangs or making their hair pink. It just sort of was what happened.
Yeah.
And like, we started the business in 2014. And in 2016, we were in process of moving part of the business from Tucson and California to Denver.
Mm.
And so my husband and I were moving. He was starting a new job. We were like literally having a final barbecue at the house. I was due to fly out the next day. And I get a phone call from my mother telling me that she has stage 4 single hit lymphoma, which is a very rare
Oh,
type of cancer.
wow.
And she had that cancer and she was treated for that cancer for 7.5 years. So while the business was doing this, my mother had stage 4 cancer and was living in upstate New York. It takes me
Yeah.
about 16 to 20 hours to get to my parents' house from Denver. And my husband and I were in the middle of a move. He was in the middle of a new job. And I was learning how to be a leader. I was managing relationship issues in my business partnership and sort of in my late 20s and getting exposed to like lots of different things that I didn't know about.
Yeah.
And it was in this period of time where I was flying between Tucson, Denver, and New York on a more or less constant basis.
Mhm.
I was never really in one place for more than a couple weeks, I want to say. Like the longest period of time that I had spent in Denver since moving there in 2016 was in 2020 when
Wow.
shutdown happened.
Wow.
I was in constant fight or flight. I was only eating comfort foods. I was exercising when I could, and I was drinking a lot of whiskey, to be
Uh-huh.
specific, not water,
Uh-huh.
a lot of whiskey. And I was
Wow.
pushing everything down that I could and saving everything to show up at work. And I would be in
What do
the
you mean pushing
hospital.
everything down as much as you could? What were you
So,
pushing
like,
down?
all of my emotions, all of my thoughts, all of my feelings, all of
Yeah.
anything that felt uncomfortable, I was trying to get to go away with either like work, busyness, or drinking.
Mhm.
And it was, or dumplings and pasta.
Mhm.
Like, it was just, I was trying to make it all go away.
Mhm.
By the time the company close happened, by the time I exited, and that part of the experience especially had been totally harrowing and extraordinarily stressful. I was breaking out in full body hives. I was not sleeping. There were nights where I distinctly remember like not being able to eat and just like crawling into our bed with a glass of whiskey and my husband, like a thick glass of whiskey, and my husband coming in with a bowl of dry Cheerios and like hand feeding me Cheerios, just trying to get me through to the next day. And then I would get up, show up, and show up as best I could to get everything done to try and put everybody in the best situation that I could given our circumstances. It By the time we exited, I then sort of had a really manic year. And then about a year after that, well, 2 years after that, I got a blood test done and I was diagnosed with prediabetes,
Ah.
which is, it sounds, I feel like I took on so much shame from that because I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I gave myself a chronic health condition that nobody in my family experiences because I mismanaged
Yeah.
everything so badly. And I was so ashamed, truly. And then I had to relearn how to like eat, sleep, and breathe. I started working with a naturopath. I changed so much about my life. I did like a cortisol test when I started working with the naturopath because my Western med doctor, and I do appreciate my Western med doctor a lot, they couldn't give me like the leadership that I was looking for. I was like, I have no idea what any of this is, and all of it is scary. And I could lose my eyesight if I get diabetes. If I keep going the way I'm going, or if the changes I make don't work, I could lose my eyesight. And as a photographer, I was terrified. And so I started working with a naturopath who could give me more complete direction and more suggestions. And he had me take a cortisol test. And your cortisol curve is supposed to like start high, dip low throughout the day, and then like rise in the morning because that's what gets you out of bed. Right. My cortisol curve was almost in an entire inverse of that. And he was like, wow. And then I did a test to see if I had like any of neurotransmitters, and GABA is a really important neurotransmitter that helps keep you calm. To this day, I still supplement my GABA because, like, the length and duration of extreme stress that I was experiencing was so long and so intense that it basically, like, totally killed my body's production of that or ability to use it entirely. And the result of that was, like, I didn't sleep for years, and that was drinking, and that was worrying, and that was flying, and that was whatever. But it was an incredibly challenging period of my life. It took a toll on my marriage. It took a toll on my body. It was, and it was hard to look back at Overtone with positivity for a very long time. It was hard to be proud of it. It was hard to recognize how astounding it was that we even did that. I had no perspective. I was hanging out with people that I later recognized I was hiding myself in.
Mhm.
And I was like not genuinely happy. Like my husband had to remind me, he's like, if you have to drink to be around people, that those are not your people. And I was like, yeah. And part of that was, like, me trying to grow up and me trying to, like, have teenage and early college years that I never had because I
Yeah.
never drank during that time. I started drinking both coffee and alcohol when I started the business.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, the coffee, I don't regret that. Like, our first warehouse was, like, 2 doors down from a micro roastery that had started the same year as us, and so we got to be friends and, so that I don't regret.
So
But
fun.
I really didn't drink any
Yeah.
alcohol except for, like, religious purposes until the business, and then when my mom got sick, my dad and I would go out drinking together after we would sit at the hospital for 6 hours. And it was just a pattern that we got into.
Is your mom
No, my mom passed in 2023.
okay, continue. I'm
And I
sorry
will
about
say
that.
that
I'm really
me
sorry
too.
about that, but I want you to go ahead and continue. We'll get back to that.
Yeah, yeah, we were lucky enough that we got to make the decision to end treatment and unfortunate to be in a position where it was a decision we had to make.
Mhm.
So, we were very fortunate that we got as long as we did, but the path was hard. She was in chemo probably every 3 months. She did 2 stem cell replacements, which are brutal, and then she was involved in 2, therapeutic breakthroughs and studies called one was called CAR T and the other was called CAR NK, and she had several near-death experiences during that time, and I just remember at one point sitting down at my parents' kitchen table on a break from the hospital and my dad looking over at me very knowingly. My dad and I are very close, and he kept telling me that, I couldn't hide from what was happening by pretending to be busy at work, and I told him, "I am genuinely busy at work, and you don't get to tell me what to do, but, like, he's my
Of
dad."
course. Of
Like,
course.
we are very the same. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it wasn't like he didn't see what I was doing. My husband carried me physically through that whole time. When I got up in the morning, it was for my obligations. So when we talk about, like, burying ourselves in work, I woke up in the morning with the express purpose of trying to be available for my team and for the thing that I built because that's where I felt my responsibility was. And in the rest of my life, I had no interest in it at all. So my husband basically made sure that I was like that the house was a house, that I was like living and breathing. But like one of the major issues was I forgot that I didn't care if I lived or died, but I forgot that that meant that that extended to him.
Yeah.
So he was sort of in charge of both of us staying alive. And so
Wow.
he would just do for me because he's like, I don't know what to do. So he
Right.
would just do. And
Yeah.
I would sit there and go like, I literally don't even want to be in my own head right now. And so I would bury myself in alcohol. And like
Yeah.
that was not functioning for anybody. Right.
No,
And
no.
at one point he did bring it to me. He's like, I'm very concerned about the amount you're drinking. And I'm like, yes, and I'm in the middle of, like, the most traumatic combination of events of my life, and this was during the deal. I'm like, "I'm in the middle of the most traumatic combination of events in my life, and I do not care what you think about it. It will change after."
Wow.
And
And
granted,
what
it
happened?
did. It slowed down almost immediately just because the immediate stress had dropped so substantially,
Mhm.
but then it didn't really stop until I got my prediabetes
Yeah.
diagnosis, and now I drink I have maybe 2 drinks a month, maybe, which I used to
Congratulations.
have thank you. I used to have, like, 4 or 5 a night.
That's huge. All right, God. Let's give her congratulations, guys. A round of applause. That's amazing. That is
Yeah.
amazing. Congratulations. You know, that's That's a lot. I'm just gonna step in real quick and I want you to continue. I taught people how to manage their diabetes for like 5 years. So when you say
So you get
pre-diabetes,
it. You get it.
girl, I get it. Like, I'm just listening, like, I hear you. You don't need to be like, it's not that big of a deal. It sounds like it sounds like I'm making it a big deal. I'm blowing it out of proportion. No, it's a big deal. Guys, pre-diabetes is pretty much a big deal. And like, I'm so well versed in it. And you have to do something about it. And it's a scary thing. It's a real scary thing. And one thing that I've seen with those folks is you literally feel like you have no control. You can't eat what you want. You have to take medication at a very specific time of day. You do lose your eyesight. You might lose your kidneys on top of that. You might have heart problems, might have high blood pressure, and it just continues. It doesn't stop. It literally eats you up from the inside. And you can't do anything about it once you have it. It's not reversible. Although some cultures feel like you can. But if you can prevent it, you can prevent it. But even when you start getting diagnosed with prediabetes, it's like you have to keep preventing it from that point. You can't stop your
Yeah, and
prevention
that's what a lot of
techniques.
people I'm learning. So, like, my last blood test showed me at a 4.8.
Nice.
So I am, like, in really good shape,
Good.
and, like, I've made so many substantial diet changes, and
Yeah.
I, like, lift weights 4 to 5 times a week, and, like, I
Nice.
really love how my life has changed, and I feel so much more back to myself than I was with the business. The business was so interesting because before the business, I was so hungry for something I could sink my teeth into. And I was doing projects and community building and, starting stuff all the time. And for me, the business was like, I got to see how big it could get. And then I got to understand that that bigness nearly ate me alive. And so now when I work with my clients, I especially love it when I get a young woman in a high growth company because
Mhm.
I'm like, let me help you not be me.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that like I get to make choices for them or that I claim their
Right.
successes, right? All of my clients' successes are purely their own because all I do is sit there, right? I'm just like, hey, have you thought about this? And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, and we talk through hard things, but like
Nice.
it's such a pleasure when I get to see a client step away from the choices that I was making and step into being able to sit with the discomfort of the reality of this work. And I was not capable at the time of being.
Yeah. I hear that. And I don't dip into drinking or drugs or anything like that, but I know I understand what you're saying. Like you didn't want to face your realities because it was too much. And when I'm assessing from all that you said, it's like everything is out of my control. The only thing I have control over is what I put in me. And that's helping me not to deal with the feelings or be present with them. So I'm going to continue. And when
Anything I
somebody
could do
tells
to
you
like
no, it's dangerous. You're hurting yourself. You're hurting us. Well, you feel like, well, I need to have some kind of control right now because I feel like my world is in shatters. So don't tell me I can't do this. So I understand. And I wish it was better for you and your spouse because it sounds like he's, husband, if you're listening to this, kudos to you for taking care of Leora during that
he
time. And even now, like you sound like an amazing person. And I hope you
he
realize that you
hung
are.
he hung and
Yeah.
he held me to account. My husband and I have been together since our senior year of high school.
Aw,
We'll be coming up on 20 years together, I think this February, and 12
incredible.
married. Yeah. My grandfather asked me this question once where he said, "Did you know what you were doing when you married your husband?" And I said, "Oh God, no. I thought I did. We had been together for 8 years. God, I hope I thought I knew what I was doing, but I had no idea."
Hmm.
And I got extraordinarily lucky to be with a person who really believes in love. So
That's a
yeah,
gift.
we're better now.
That's a gift
Um,
for sure.
we're yeah, we're better now.
Awesome.
But like we definitely don't take anything that we have for granted. And we know how to how to really be with each other now, I think in a way that we never knew before. And then since then, even more so.
I know we're almost at time, but I did want to ask you, we didn't get to talk about your mom that much. So, in just like
Yeah.
30 seconds, if you could, how would you advise somebody to process that kind of grief with everything feel like they're in shambles, shattered, like no control? You lost your mom while you kind of gave up your business at the same time. How do you process that? and be okay.
Yeah, I think luckily by the time my mom had passed, I was already starting to be able to sit with myself, which
Mm,
was good. The night of her funeral, I did not sit with myself at all, and I
yeah,
got really, really hammered, but I don't judge myself for that. The process of my mom's illness alongside the company, I can't untangle the 2 of them, and grief is such a long and complicated process. One of the things that I was able to do with my mom and for my mom was help her come to terms with the fact of her own impending death, where she had an extraordinary medical event, um, in June of 2023, and she had, essentially chemical meningitis, completely lost her mind, couldn't talk, was completely nonverbal. And with a hero dose of steroids, we were able to sort of bring her back online. And then she was like, "Great." As soon as she was sort of back mostly in her mind, she was like, "Great, cool. So I'll start up chemo again next week." And she had cancer in her spine and cancer
oh
in
my
her
god,
like it was everywhere. And she's like, "I'll
wow,
start it up again next week." And I look her doctor had just come in and said as much as she could that there was literally nothing else we could do.
yeah,
And I sat and looked at my mom and I said, "You have got to be kidding me." And she said, "What? Like, you don't feel okay about it now that I'm like sitting here in front of you and I can talk to you?" And I'm like, I mean, God bless your brain because she did not remember any of her worst moments. But like, I sat there and I went, "You are continuing to choose the pain that you know instead of your fear of dying." And I'm going to tell you right now, you are either going to die traumatically in a hospital or we can plan your death. And I need you to choose one.
oh
And then I stuck around for a while after we went home and we continued to have those conversations.
yeah,
And one thing that was like me and my mom was an actuary in her early career and is incredibly math minded. And to her, everything was about how she could figure it out. She was a crossword puzzler and she would identify any manner of things on the side of a road. And I like to this day, I can barely identify poison ivy, and I grew up on the East Coast, and that's, like, a dangerous thing to not be able to identify. Um, but it wasn't for lack of her trying to teach it to me, but, we missed the mark with each other on so many things, but, like, we tried so hard, and it's okay that it sucks. It's okay that it sucks, but she got to see the company's success. She got to use the product, even though the first time I ever colored my hair, she like screamed bloody murder. Like we got to experience what we could have been together and she got to see what I was capable of. And, I got the ability to be there in the hospital with them. And I got the ability to see her through some stuff. And that's life, right?
it's not perfect.
No.
I think sometimes you feel like it should be a certain way, but that's when we need to fix our expectations. Because the more we change our expectations, the happier we'll be with what the reality or the outcome is. And it sounds like you were much closer to your dad than your mom, and I think that's okay. Like it's just how things went. But I'm glad that you are starting to find peace with yourself and what was and what could be now, and that's a beautiful place to be. And I want to thank you for being so open and vulnerable, sharing your story, the raw struggle, and getting into your purpose, showing us that recovery and discovery are really, truly lifelong processes. And thank you so much for joining us today. And everyone, I'll make sure that I put Leora's contact information, which she shared in the show notes, so you can connect with her if you wish and give us a follow on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. And I will see you next time on Raw Talks. Thank you so
Thank you
much,
so much
everyone.
for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.